Hi, everybody. We're a couple of minutes early, but I'm going to just start anyway. This is day 2, unit 3 of the Treeleaf 2019 Rohatsu. I hope you had a good orioki with Kyonin. And for this session, we are down for some Zazen, a Dharma talk, Kinhin, and then some more Zazen. So, it's only given 30 minutes for Zazen and the Dharma talk, so I'll try not to go over. But if I do, don't worry, I'll just shorten the second session. But I'll try not to talk too much. So, Zazen. As you probably know by now, we are focusing our talks on the Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage by Shito Shichan, excuse me, or Sakito Kisan, as we call him in Japanese. It seems amazing to me that this is a poem that was written in 8th century China, and yet I love it. I love this poem. It still speaks to me today, and I think it speaks to a lot of other people as well. As Sekishi said yesterday, a lot of things are obviously different between 21st century now and 8th century China, but there's a lot of things that are the same. And what I like about this poem is the hut he talks about is a real hut as well as a figurative hut. He lived at the South Temple on Heng Mountain, and he built a thatched hut on top of a nearby stone outcrop. And that is this hut. It was a hut he actually lived in, practiced in, and the hut he wrote this poem about. And I actually feel quite a big affinity for Shito and his hut. I've actually written about this in a blog post. Most of you know that I have a chronic illness and I leave my house or my flat. I've got a ground floor flat in rural England, and I leave it about twice a year. Otherwise, I am just in my hut. I've got a little patio outside where I grow herbs, and there's a squirrel that comes to visit to eat some peanuts, and some birds as well, and a cat. But I feel the same as Shito. Everything is here. There's nothing left out. Even though I hardly go anywhere, makes no difference. This is a full life. I'm going to give you, I've got 8 lines of the poem, so I'm just going to read these to you, and then I shall go through them in some sort of order. Just sitting with head covered, all things are at rest. Thus, this mountain monk doesn't understand at all. Living here, he no longer works to get free. Who would proudly arrange seats trying to entice guests? Turn around the light to shine within. then just return. The vast inconceivable source can't be faced or turned away from. Meet the ancestral teachers. Be familiar with their instruction. Bind grasses to build a hut, and don't give up. So we start off just sitting with head covered, all things are at rest. And I think by this, I don't think that Shito is talking about some sort of Islamic head covering or anything like that. He's talking about shelter. He's built his hut. It's simple, but we've got some very basic human needs, the most fundamental of which are food, water, and shelter. We know from the first few lines that he's got food. After I eat, I enjoy a nap. And I imagine he has water from the monastery also. So this is his shelter. He's got his most basic needs covered. So all things are at rest. All things are there just as they are. What does he need to strive for? He's had his lunch, he can have a nap. Doesn't get much better than that. So he's got his shelter, but also he's got that simple meeting of his needs. It's like we just did orioki. Orioki, as most of you know, means just enough. And again, Shito here has just enough. He has a simple hut. He probably eats simple food, drinks water. And why add anything more? I imagine most of us do have more, and we know that having some things is great. I mean, if I didn't have this laptop here and all the technology, I wouldn't be able to talk to you now. There's some other things I wouldn't want to do without, like my washing machine. But otherwise, when we start adding things to our life, it often doesn't make it easier. It's just something else to clean, something else to wash, something else to trip over, something else to worry about somebody taking or it breaking. And this idea of living in a simple hut, I mean, Shitu's not the only one we know like this. This is a spiritual staple, not just in the East, but in the West as well. We know that Bodhidharma, he didn't live in a hut, but he was reputed to live in a cave. The poet in the 18th century, Ryokan, he had his Gogoan hermitage, which was little more than a hut. There's a nice little book I'm just holding up, and you'll be able to see if you watch this back, called Four Huts by the translator Burton Watson. And he's in there, there's 4 writings by Chinese and Japanese hermits. And they're spiritual classics of the East, of people writing about their life in the hut. And the fact is, they've deliberately taken themselves away from the busyness and bustle, whatever it was, even in 8th century Japan, China. A monastery would have been a busy place with a lot going on. So they've deliberately taken themselves away to somewhere secluded, met their basic needs, but no more. In a simple hut, and I find this, if I open the doors of my hut, you're in touch with nature. If you're in a monastery, even in 8th century China, you're protected, there's a fire, there's baths, there's everything. And you're in a Dharma hall, you'll hear some birds singing and other things going on. But with a hut that's made of grass, you basically are part of the environment. And it's not just on Earth that people live in huts. If we consider the totally real lineage of Jedi Masters, Ben Kenobi has his stone hut on Tatooine, Yoda on Dagobah, and Luke Skywalker on the water world of Ahch-To. And I found this poem, which is one I really love, by somebody who was on Earth. We don't actually know his name. He's a 10th century Irish Christian. And I don't find his writing dissimilar to Shitu's. Said, I have a hut in the wood. No one knows it but my lord. An ash tree this side, a hazel on the other. A great mound encloses it. 2 feathery doorposts for support, and a lintel of honeysuckle. Around its close, the wood sheds its nuts upon fat swine. The size of my hut, small yet not small, a place of familiar paths. The she-bird in its dress of blackbird colour sings a melodious strain from its gable. A little hidden hut which owns the path-filled forest. Will you go with me to see it? The second line in my group of 8 lines is, thus this mountain monk doesn't understand at all. Now, I like the term mountain monk. It's basically similar. If you've read Dogen, you'll have seen he uses the term patch robe monk. This is much the same. In China, monasteries were often built on mountains. A mountain monk is a Zen monk. Although in this case, she too is a monk who lives on a mountain. It's what it says on the tin. And I think this can be taken in 2 ways. One is, here's a guy, he's got his hut, he's got his food, his water, his shelter, and he's just sitting. All things are at rest. He eats, enjoys a nap. And I think what he doesn't understand is why everyone else is chasing after something. They're chasing after status. They're chasing after position. I mean, maybe in a way he's fortunate. Being a monk in some of these early societies was often an easy way to have a stable life. If you were a farmer or something else, or you worked in local politics or in the army, it's a hard life. You could die. Your harvest could be destroyed by the weather. Being a monk, you generally know you're going to be looked after for your whole life. But still, I think he doesn't understand why other people get so worried about the smaller stuff of life when you can just live so simply. But as I say, I think he has it easy too. But I also think it's talking about our way of understanding. In modern day, we use logic a lot. We think about things, we try and understand things. And I think you know yourself, you can understand Buddhist ideas of death and impermanence, but it doesn't help a great deal when someone you love dies. We have to feel it, we have to live it. And I think he's talking about that. I'm sure most of you know the Zen story between Dizang and Fayan. When Zen Master Dizang said to Fayan, "Where are you going?" And Fayan replied, "Around on pilgrimage." Dizang replied, "What's the purpose of pilgrimage?" Fayan admitted, "I don't know." And Dizang said, "Not knowing is most intimate." And one thing I think about this poem, if you look at it, he mentions napping, resting, returning, opening your hands and walking innocent. It's very much a poem of just being as you are, being natural. You're not trying to understand things. You're not trying to strive for things. You're just there experiencing life in its bare bones. And we talk about this in Zen a lot. Most of you will have heard of Shinryu Suzuki's beginner's mind. And in Zen, we sometimes will say, don't know mind. It's that mind we have before the conceptual brain kicks in and starts projecting all our stuff onto what's happening. And if we don't understand at all, then that's good. Our mind is open to all this newness and vitality that's there the whole time, everything that's there. And we set aside, in Zen practice, we set aside that knowing and understanding when we sit. And we just rest. And the next line is, living here, he no longer works to get free. I think we can tell from the first few lines, what would he try and get free from? This nice life where he eats lunch and enjoys a nap? There's Senkan and Dokshin were the third and fourth Zen ancestors. And one day, Dokshin approached his teacher and said, I asked for the master's compassion. Please show me the gate of emancipation. And Senkan asked him, who has bound you? And Dokshin had to admit, well, no one. So Senkan said, well, why are you seeking emancipation? And we know this is one of those Zen paradoxes, isn't it? That all that we're seeking is right here, right now. But yet we always want something else. And Charlotte Joko Beck said in her book, Everyday Zen, that by the time they got to Zen Center, most people have given up the idea that a new car could make them happy, or a new relationship, or a new job. But instead, they start thinking, well, if I become enlightened, then I'll be happy. Or if I become ordained, then I'll be happy. So he no longer works to get free because she too sees it's a fool's errand. Everything's here, right now. There's nothing to get free from. That said, we know in our minds, we strive for things. I know myself, when I'm particularly ill and there's kind of feels like a void or an emptiness inside, I start clicking on eBay and Amazon trying to buy something that's going to improve my life. And it can do for a day or two. But I know how our mind works. If we are faced with a horrible experience, we don't want it. We want to watch Netflix or do something else, eat a cookie, whatever. So I know that although there is nothing to get free from, there's still, our mind's still doing its thing. And it's too easy to believe it. It's very convincing. Well, mine is. The Indian guru Tilopa said the following about meditation, which I really like. Let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. And Dogen says something very similar in Fukan Zazengi, the universal recommended instructions for Zazen. Do not think of good and bad. Do not consider right and wrong. Stop the driving movement of mind, will, consciousness. Cease intellectual consideration through images, thoughts, and reflections. Do not aim to become a Buddha. See, he knew, even 800 years ago, he knew that we'd get on that cushion and strive to become a Buddha. And that's the thing. The trick is, you only get free when you stop trying to get free. It's like one of those really annoying Chinese finger traps. You can't pull yourself free. You just have to rest, relax, and let go. And one thing I almost missed is the first two words of that sentence, living here. That's the trick. You have to live here. You have to live now. There's no use being on your cushion and imagining what will happen when you're a great Zen teacher with a huge following. That never happens to me. And it's no point in thinking about your last holiday or your next holiday or what you're having for dinner. I mean, it's fine to think about those things, but the freedom comes in being right here, right now. with everything that is. So, I mean, what I love about this poem is he's lots of different parts of it which point to different things, but essentially it's all saying the same thing. Who would proudly arrange seats, trying to entice guests? And that's the thing, that's what we do in life. We don't arrange seats so much, but we arrange our life. If we got a Facebook page, we put up pictures which make us seem interesting and cool. If we're giving a Dharma talk, we try and do it well so that people like us and say, oh, that was good. And this is how we try and live our life. And in a way, it's not bad. It's not bad being the best version of yourself. But we tend to live so that we do things so that we get praise, not blame. We get pleasure, not pain. We get people liking us rather than not liking us. It's the same in meditation. The Thai forest teacher, Ajahn Chah, once said, meditation's like putting a chair in the middle of the room and seeing who comes to visit. What comes to visit? You know what comes to visit. It's our negative, well, our positive and negative thoughts, our fantasies and delusions. It's our fears that would never be good enough. It's the argument we had with a co-worker yesterday or whatever. And sometimes we think if we follow the precepts, if we're a good Zen student, then we'll get the right kind of guests. We'll get that nice glow of peace that you get sometimes in meditation. And you won't get the crappy stuff anymore. And I'm sure everyone knows it doesn't matter how long you practice for, you still get the crappy stuff. I mean, calling it crappy stuff, that's the fertilizer we use to work with our life. So it's not crappy in a way, but we don't just sit there with a nice peaceful glow. Doesn't matter how lovely our robes are, how well you've sewn your rakusu, you're still going to get your mind stuff. And it's the same way in life. We think if we live a good life, we'll get rewarded. And that's not, I mean, it's not a terrible way to think. If we live well, I mean, following the precepts, hopefully that makes life better for us and better for everyone in our life. But we can't think that just because we're doing the right thing, life's going to give us cookies. So Shitu continues, turn the light to shine within, then just return. He's just talking about meditation and sitting. Again, he's talking about not focusing on external stuff, not worrying about changing life circumstances. Okay, if you've got a crap job and you can change it, do that. If your car needs fixing, fix it. But when we turn around the light to shine within, we realize that a lot of our problems come from the way we look at life in our own mind. Ways chasing after things. Again, Dogen in Fukan Zazengi said, we should cease the intellectual work of studying sayings and chasing words. We should learn the backward step of turning light and reflecting. Body and mind will naturally fall away, and the original features will manifest themselves before us. Again, stop looking outside and chasing things. Everything's here. It's here in this hut. And if you live in a big house, it's your hut. Wherever you are, your work, it's your hut. Your car, it's your hut. Wherever you are, it's your hut, and everything's there. And again, throughout this poem, there's this sense of resting and returning. Return is this natural, open your hands and walk innocent state. Have lunch and enjoy a nap. That's the kind of thing a child does. And there's a whole lot of wisdom about it. It's just natural. The child's not trying to please anyone. The child's just saying, I've had my lunch. I'm tired now. It's just this natural way of being. So, and again, it's a meditation instruction. I can't remember who it was who gave a talk earlier and just said in meditation, I think it was Bjorkan, when the thoughts come, you return. Just this natural state. We don't have to be striving. Just rest in this state. And why don't we have to be striving? Well, he tells us next. The vast, inconceivable source can't be faced or turned away from. Well, lots of the talks are focused on this, that everything is interconnected. If we look at our grandparents, we've got 4 grandparents who are necessary to make us. And if we go back, it becomes 8 ancestors, 16, and it quickly becomes like the whole world is right here in our DNA, and not just human DNA, it's all the animals that came before that. It's all the animals they had to eat. It's all the water. It's the land they lived on. In our hut, the vast inconceivable source is making everything. In us, we are an expression of the vast inconceivable source. And we can't, it's like a wave can't turn away from the ocean because it is the ocean. We can't turn away or face the inconceivable source because that's everything and we're part of it. Often we think, I'm me and all the things outside, they're the objects. We know this, it's a subject-object duality. But we're not like that. We're not separate from all that. And she too is not only pointing to this, he's telling us how to see the vast inconceivable source. We sit, we rest, we return in Zazen. And we can become aware of this, everything in our heart, and this vast inconceivable source blooming through us and blooming through everything there is. You can't get away from it. It's the stuff of life itself. And he says, meet the ancestral teachers and be familiar with their instruction. And I love this line because it's almost like he was telling us this, and now, more than 1,200 years on, he is one of the ancestral teachers who's teaching us, who's giving us instruction. So this is one of the ways we meet the ancestral teachers. We read their poems. And it's like Shitu is here, teaching us himself. In Soto Zen, we read Dogen. He lived 400 more years after, 500 years after Shitu. And again, his words still speak to us today. We meet Dogen through his words, and we become familiar with his instruction. I read Fuken Zazengi most months. I probably should read it more often. Not only do I get a lot out of the instruction in it, I feel I'm meeting Dogen face to face. And there's another way to meet the ancestral teachers. Can you guess what it is? Shikantaza. The haiku poet Matsu Bashu said, do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise, seek what they sought. And again, that's what we do. We learn from Shitu and Dogen, but we're not trying to be Shitu or Dogen. We're trying to use the same methods to have the same kind of understanding and insights they have. Just what Shitu did, just what Hongzhi did, just as Dogen did. We meet the ancestors face to face when we're on the cushion. And the last line, bind grasses to build a hut and don't give up. I don't think he's telling you literally to go out and build a hut, although if you've got space, build a hut. Why not? But I think he's saying build yourself a space, build your life in a way that allows you to practice, gives you that, although we're not separate from anyone or anything, it's still nice to have that space, even if it's just a corner of a room with a Buddha statue or a Buddha picture and a candle, where we can practice, where we can sit. And we can do this in our Samu work, as we've been doing through Rohatsu, giving full attention to what we do. We don't just give ourselves fully to sitting, but in everything we do. Also, I think it's about always having something to do, always having a challenge, binding grasses to build your hut, rebinding the grasses, fixing up the hut, whatever. We shouldn't just be sitting when our grasses are neatly bound and our hut is in a pristine condition. Otherwise, you wouldn't get much done at all. And regarding don't give up, I think we've seen in Ango, most of us have experienced this. We have something happen in life in Ango, and people come to the Shusos, they go to Junda and say, right, that's it, I can't do Ango anymore. I've got an illness, or I've lost my job, or a family member's sick. And we say the same thing every time. Take some time out, but this is your Ango. And again, in practice, somebody said earlier, everything you meet is your life. Everything you meet is part of your path. Everything you meet is practice. Everything is the vast inconceivable source. Regardless of what happens, we don't give up. We just carry on practicing. We don't have to strive. We can just rest naturally and allow things to unfold. Obviously, we're not passive and we can take control of things, but we accept what's happening as they are now and deal with them. I've been sitting for somewhere over 2 decades now. I don't have all the answers, but one thing I do know is daily practice makes a difference. At least I think it does. I don't know how my life would have turned out otherwise, but it feels like it does. And that's the thing about practice. If you sit once every couple of weeks, you don't really notice so much. Not a bad thing, but it is the not giving up. Not giving up in anger, even when it gets tough. When you've got family, full-time job, it's hard. I get it. But we still find time just to take a few breaths or practice in the midst of life. All we do is keep sitting and try and be aware this vast inconceivable source, which is here all the time. Not always aware of it, but it's just life in all its beauty, all its majesty. It's amazing. I say this, I'm ill, I'm in pain almost all of the time, and I'm stuck in this flat. But there's something incredible about life. And this Rohatsu is part of it, just being able to share this time with all of you is just incredible. So anyway, I think I've gone over by a few minutes, but I think that's fortunately all I've got to say on this for the time being. But does anyone have any questions or comments? Sekishi. Who'd have thought?
I can't stop talking.
I know the feeling.
Well, it's lovely. Thank you. I can't remember what it was you said. Something in the middle of your talk brought back a memory from when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. Probably 5 or 6 years old. I was really into the choose your own adventure books. Did you guys have the choose your own?
Yeah, I love those.
I can't remember what the MacGuffin was. Like you were trying to get to Shangri-La or to an alien planet or some special place. And you met multiple people along your journey who said you cannot get there by picking and choosing.
Seriously.
And at some point, in frustration that I couldn't get to Shangri-La or wherever it was, like I turned to that page in the book, and it was like page 99. And then I went through the whole book, right? What's the path I need to take to get there? And those cheeky bastards didn't give you a way to get to page 99 because that would have been picking and choosing. And that was like,
It's like Zen fighting fantasy.
and I wish I don't even know what book it was. It was one of the choose your own adventures out there. It's really kind of subversive and has a beautiful Dharma message. And yeah, so like, I don't know, somehow that dovetails in, right? Like that.
That's great. That sounds like an amazing book. But they're like you, I was reading them when I was like 10, 11. And I would have been absolutely frustrated by that.
So what would have happened if we handed it to Shito?
Right.
Would he have used that book appropriately and patched a hole in the roof? I don't.
Who knows? But no, it is interesting. Thank you. Kyonin.
Thank you for your talk. Just on a very super nerd and geeky note, that book was UFO 5440 by Edward Packard, and it was so hard to get to Ultima because you couldn't choose any page at all. You had to just cheat in order to get to Ultima. And the last page would say that you only get there by introspection and by just living your life, but not by choosing, but by cheating. So it was a very interesting book. Thank you.
Okay, show of hands. How many people in Tree Leaf read UFO 5440?
I never read it, but I think we should get Jundo to put it on the Tree Leaf Book Club.
Oh yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun.
Sounds great.
I can't believe you remember the name of it, Kenan. That's lovely.
No, that's fabulous.
We should have a workshop on choose your own adventure books, but that's for another day.
And I'm completely late for getting you to do Kinhin. 7 minutes late for Kinhin, but we don't have to. No, I won't. Instead of carrying on with Zazen, we'll just go straight into Kinhin if that's all right. So thank you all for listening, and time for Kinhin. Zazen. Thank you all for joining me for this unit. I think we've got half an hour rest now before unit 4, which is half an hour of Samu. So make yourself a cup of tea or something, and I'll see you soon. Thanks very much.